Welcome to Game Changers Live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Game Changers Live. My name is Sergio Tigera, your host, and you can catch us each and every week on your favorite podcast channel, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it. Also on Island TV on Mondays and Wednesdays on Comcast. And we are coming to you live from the campus of Florida International University, the College of Communications, Architecture, and the Arts, which is our home studio here in Miami. And I have a guest today, local hometown hero and recognized restaurateur. We got Iggy Garcia-Menocal, and he's a CEO and founder of and founding partner of Coveted Group, which we'll talk about here, has done some amazing things, including getting recently a Michelin star restaurant here in Miami. So welcome, my brother. Good to see you.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you for having me.
So Iggy, tell me a little bit about your past, because you were in accounting as your undergrad and also in your master's degree, and you make a big switch to the restaurant business. Tell me a little bit about what was your original drive going into the accounting space?
So I was always pretty good at business and in numbers going through high school and college, and I felt it was like the right path into, I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, and I felt like business was a very broad, degree. So I thought, listen, maybe accounting is something more specific. So, let me try that out. And I actually thrived and did pretty well. I was with Deloitte & Touche, which back at the time was one of the big six. I was with them for 6 years. And then I ended up leaving them to become the director of accounting for MasterCard for the Latin America division. And I had been there a year, and I really never had any plans of, going into hospitality. All I knew about it was I like to eat and drink. I mean, that's about it, right? And randomly, one day I get a call from a former colleague at Deloitte saying, "Hey, Don Shula is looking for a chief financial officer for his restaurant business. Would you want to, interview with him?" And I said, "Oh man, that sounds interesting, but I've only been here a year. I don't know about switching. Let me think about it." That night I get home, and Dave Shula, Don Shula's oldest son, calls me. And, I knew Dave growing up. He was offensive coordinator for the Dolphins. Yeah. And then he was offensive coordinator under Jimmy Johnson for the Cowboys. And then he was a head coach for the Bengals for a long time. I had grown up watching him, so I knew who he was. He calls me. He's like, "Hey, Ig, this is Dave Shula. I got your name from Ray. Would you mind coming in and, meeting with my dad and I?" And, so when Dave Shula calls you,
you answer the call.
And asks you to come meet with Don Shula and him, you say yes. So the rest is history. I knew nothing about the restaurant industry. I went into the company in a CFO role. But man, as I started getting into it, I really quickly decided, I like eating and drinking a lot more than debits and credits. It was a lot more fun. And I did everything I could to really learn everything about it.
What was the biggest difference going from a big company like Deloitte to a bit more of like a family business like Shula's?
Yeah, companies like Deloitte and like MasterCard, they're obviously huge companies. They're very established, and since there's so many employees, you really get to see a very small sliver of the entire business. Yeah. Once you move into a smaller company like Shula's or even our company now, just because you don't have the headcount, you get to expose to a lot of other things, and that's not just finance. So really, at Shula's was the first time that I got exposed to marketing and design and public relations and operations. So I was involved in a lot of other things, not just the finance side. And, I really liked that a lot more. It's not for everybody. It's definitely takes somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit, right, that you want to kind of get out of your lane and learn a lot more about the business in general.
What was it that you learned from Shula, either him and his dad, that really stuck with you?
I'll tell you what, I have a lot of stories with Coach Shula. One of the most interesting things, or one of the neatest experiences, anywhere that I traveled with him throughout the country, everybody knew who he was. It was really amazing. And I'll never forget this. We were in Portland, and, he was, but by that time he was already, having a hard time walking with hips and, getting up and down. And we had a long trip, and we're at the airport sitting down, and I was sitting next to him, and some random guy came to say hi to him, and he asked him for, I think it was a picture. And then so I stepped in, I go, no, sir, Coach is, he's had a long day, he's tired. And he stops me and he goes, no, I'll do it. And he gets up, and he's struggling to get up, and he gets up and takes a picture. and he turns to me and he says, you should always make enough time for those that take their time, to talk to you. And he had this approach that whether it was a president or a janitor, he always made time for people. And he never said no. And in the 5 years I was with him, I never saw him turn down one autograph or say no to one fan ever.
Wow. That's amazing. It's a level of humility that a lot of people tend to forget, A good example is DJ Irie, Ian Grosser, that we went to school together here.
No kidding.
He became obviously very famous, but you talk to him and he never forgets to, just being humble, right? And being kind, and what that really entails, because you could let success go to your head at some point. So you're at Shula's for how long?
I was with him for 5 years.
All right. So then from there, what's the next step in the journey?
So I ended up joining a company called 50 Eggs. At the time, the company had Lime Fresh Mexican Grill. And then we ended up selling that to Ruby Tuesdays for a good chunk of money. And then after that, we opened Yardbird and Swine and Kong and a lot of cool concepts.
Wow.
And that's where I really got the, I want to say my...
Was that also with 50 Eggs, or was that on your own?
That was at 50 Eggs,
okay.
50 Eggs. I was a chief financial officer for them as well. And that's really where I got my further education on the, within the hospitality industry as to how to create your own concepts, because when I got to Shula's was really the concepts were already done. I wasn't involved in creating anything. Right. But at 50X, we're constantly creating new concepts. So being part of that creative process, to me was very interesting. Yeah. And that's sort of what we do now, actually, And how do you go about that process, right? Because there are so many different concepts, endless amounts of ideas. Mm-hmm. How do you then narrow something down and say, okay, this is what this city needs right now. Mm-hmm. This is what will work? Because it seems like everything that you guys touch works. Or is that not true? I would say some more than others. You're not going to hit a home run in every single one.
Right.
You got a couple singles in there, but no, yeah, we've been blessed. I think what's made us a little bit different, my partner and I, who's also a CPA and also comes from Big Four accounting. So we have very similar backgrounds, and him and I have been best friends since we were, 15. Both of us grew up here in Miami, we're born and raised here. But I think what made us a little bit different is that we kind of did it backwards, just by coincidence. Again, because, like I mentioned earlier, I never had any intentions.
Accountants that became restaurateurs
going into this business. So we did it backwards. We already understood the business side of things. We already stood business because of our backgrounds, and it was a matter of just learning the operation side. And that's actually worked out pretty well for us. The restaurant industry is a very difficult industry. It's a penny business, they say. So the fact that we're able to understand that, that's really helped us.
Wow. So from 50 Eggs, you start really gaining a lot of traction and experience in terms of the real entrepreneurial part, right? You're kind of getting into the creative side and that stuff. Then you move out to,
and then my partner and I, by that point in time, Coach Shula had allowed me to do my own franchise, which was a Shula City 47 Grill down in Coral Gables.
Okay.
So I had a full-time job, and then I had that as a side thing. My partner was one running it more full-time than I was. And then in 2014, I want to say, we bought another restaurant in the airport, a Corona Beach House. So we kind of had these two restaurants, one street side, one in the airport, which we
were
still
you
have
already
today.
Grove Bay by that point?
No, we weren't. No. Right. So we had these two restaurants, and we're like
just kind of independent operators. And
it was kind of me and him, and we had hired like this one accounting person, and we were like, hey, I think we sort of have a business here. Why don't we kind of put it together? Why don't you leave your job, join me, and kind of, let's do this full time. Yeah. And that's where Grove Bay started. So
you were already doing it full time?
At the time that I left, I had a full-time job with 50 Eggs, and then we had the two restaurants that my partner was running on the side.
Wow.
And then, I took the leap of faith, and it's a little bit scary taking that that step, and, from an employee to, your own boss, because it's exciting and all that, but at the same time, it's scary because how are you going to pay your bills?
Exactly.
If you're not making ends meet. We were lucky enough that we had these two restaurants that are already, producing a little bit, pretty decent return. So we were able to do it.
What is the psychological process that you went through where you kind of cut the umbilical cord to the paycheck?
It's a great question. You go through all the thoughts of, can I make my mortgage next month?
Yeah.
What if something goes wrong with the two little restaurants that we had?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to pay for things? How am I going to, survive? I felt that I'm going to give it a chance, but if stuff doesn't work out, I can always go back into the corporate world.
Right.
But I felt at that age, I was still in my mid to late 30s, that it was now or never. I felt like I had to do it. And I don't want to go back in life and look back and say, that was a regret I didn't have. And at the end of the day, if it didn't work out, then, like I said, it's just
at least
just money,
know.
but at least
Right.
And but all those insecurities, all that anxiety of, the unknown, definitely go through your head.
Oh yeah, it's a huge step. I'm exactly the way you are. Late 30s, went on my own, and I'd rather regret something I have done than regret something I haven't done. Exactly. I don't want to look back and say, oh man, I wish I would have, tried doing something on my own. And it's tough. I mean, it's like you said, a lot of the insecurities surface, and then your self-talk kind of goes, nuts. And it's like, it's a roller coaster, right? Entrepreneurship is a huge roller coaster. But okay, so you make the step out there, mm-hmm. you start seeing some traction. When did you say, okay, we got something here that we can really expand on, and we're good at this?
Yeah, so I think it was by our third restaurant, which was Glass and Vine in Coconut Grove, that it was off to really big sales number right from the beginning. And where my partner and I looked at each other, we're like, I think we could figure this out. I think we could do this.
So at that point, you had already started Grove Bay
mm-hmm.
Group,
correct,
right? So then that was your first restaurant,
correct?
Yeah,
as under the Grove Bay umbrella,
right?
Yeah, correct. And that was a huge hit from the beginning. It did good sales, good operating income. So at that point, we felt, okay, I think sure, there's a lot we still need to learn. There's a lot of mistakes that we're making and that we're going to make in the future.
Right.
But overall, I think we have a decent formula that we can, that we can grow.
What would you say is, the most important aspect?
There's a lot of things, but I would say the most important is hiring the right people. I think that comes out really for all industries.
Anything, yeah.
Because we've had people at the top, and it also starts at the top, the general manager and the chef, and everything flows down from there. And we've had instances where we've had great people, and we've had instances where we've had folks that just weren't cutting it, and you see the difference in the production and from an operations standpoint and the guest experience all the way down to the financial aspect of the business. It is night and day. So really hiring the right people is really key.
And I've been watching some of your videos, and you talk about family and culture and high performance, right? And a great attitude and a love for being in the business,
mm-hmm.
right? So
mm-hmm.
how important is it to find the right fit in terms of that? What's the first thing you look for? Is it culture? Is it, their attitude? Is it, how hungry they are? Is it their resume? What is it that you look for in people?
Yeah. So, you touched on something that was very important to us. This really came from our background in, public accounting and in these big firms, Deloitte, and for me and, Ernst & Young for my partner. These are companies that they're top 100 best companies to work for.
Right.
And they're very culture driven.
Yeah.
So we kind of brought that into our industry, which is for the most part, it's kind of like the Wild West, it's you hear a lot of horror stories. So when we started the company, we said, that's not what we want to do. We want to bring over some of these things that we've learned from our previous experience and bring it here. We come up with our mission statements and, with our core values. So our mission statement is, enhancing people's lives, one person and one neighborhood at a time.
Right.
And that's broad. And that can be guests, that could be, team members, that's our investors, that's really
anybody
everybody
that the restaurant touches.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just want to make a positive impact in all those people's lives, however we can. And then from there, we kind of drew down, four core values. And the first one is exceptional hospitality, making sure that our guests have a really memorable experience with great service, a great ambiance, great food. The second one is people focused. We want to make a really big effort in taking care of our people, treating each other with respect, which again is not a big thing that happens in our industry. But F-bombs being thrown around in kitchens is very common in our industry, and for us, that's a no. Somebody will get terminated for cursing at somebody else. The third piece is community. So, being an active member of our community, and I'm really happy to not announce because it was announced a few weeks ago. But we did a partnership with actually FIU, with the School of Hospitality. So we started our own foundation called the Grove Bay Foundation, and we're going to be providing $300,000 over the next 5 years to provide scholarships to underprivileged kids that can't afford to study, hospitality.
Yeah.
So that's, that's really meaningful for us, to try to pay it forward and help. And then the fourth core value is performance. And, that's not just, P&L performance, but that's, everybody's individual performance as a whole. But we feel, what we always say, that if we take care of our guests, that if we take care of our people, and that if we're an active member of our community, then the performance of profits kind of take care of itself. So that's kind of last, out of our core values.
So being on top of that, it's really critical. And like you said, the guest experience is number one in that sense. So you open up Glass and Vine, you see that going very well. And by the way, if you haven't been there, it's a beautiful location, very cool place. We love going there with the kids, because they have the playground in the back right there. The location's fantastic. Was there something about the Grove that you guys just loved, or from your past, you said, oh, let's call it Grove Bay and we'll open up a lot of the restaurants there, or what?
So I'll tell you a funny story. Glass and Vine, where it is today, that was like sort of an old abandoned building.
I remember that.
Remember, that was abandoned for a long time.
Right.
So that place holds a memorable experience for me, because that's the first time I had a drink at 16 years old.
No way. My gosh.
So circle back, many years later, it's kind of karma, but it's funny. It was great. No, but Grove Bay, our name, our company's name is Grove Bay Hospitality Group, and it all started because we had bid on the Scotty's Charterhouse project back in 2013. Wow. So after our first two restaurants, that was kind of like the first project, that we went into.
Right.
And it was a very complicated project, because it was an RFP. And so we had to bid, we had to go against other folks. And then once we won that, it had to go to public referendum. So meaning that the citizens had to vote for yes in the election of 2013. It ended up passing. I think it was 63-37, it ended up passing. But that project took 9 years to, we just opened Bayshore Club,
right.
2 weeks ago. So it took 9 years to come to fruition.
Unbelievable.
But it was because of that project, because our offices are in Coconut Grove, that kind of, the name Grove Bay Hospitality Group, came along. Now, because that took so long to, sort of develop, Glass and Vine ended up being our third restaurant. Also in the Grove. So we kind of started in the Grove. That was kind of our home turf as far as, the first two projects and our office as well.
Yeah. So then tell me about now Stubborn Seed and Red Rooster, and how those concepts kind of came about.
Yeah. Stubborn Seed, a funny story. So Jeremy Ford, who is our chef partner there, he was, this is going back a few years now, 5 or 6 years. He was on Top Chef season 13.
Yeah.
And, I rarely watch those shows, but that first episode of that season, I just happened to watch for, whatever reason. And he ended up winning, that episode.
And he's a Miami guy.
And he's a Miami guy.
That's cool.
At that point, he was at the Edition Hotel. So he was, he worked under Jean-Georges. So he really wasn't a known commodity yet.
Right.
But he had that it factor, man. He just had it. And it's funny. I'm like, God, this guy's from Miami. And I get to the office the next day. My partner's there. He's like, did you watch it? I'm like, I did. He's like, why don't we call him? I'm sure, let's call him. So we called him up. He's like, yeah, I know who you guys are. I'll go meet with you. And we met, and he never told us. And we're like, so how did you do? And he's like, I did well. I'm like, what does that mean? and he never told us that he had actually won Top Chef season, that season. So we ended up signing him, before the season was over, because that's obviously, pre-recorded. Mm-hmm. And, we opened Stubborn Seed. And from day one, we received a 4 stars from the Herald, which, they hadn't given one in a very, very long time. And to Jeremy's credit, his goal was always very high. His goal was James Beard or Michelin. Mind you, Michelin wasn't even here back then. When we opened Stubborn Seed, Michelin only started rating Miami restaurants this year. This is the first year.
Really? Wow.
And so the bar was set pretty high by us, and by him. To his credit, he had a very, very high standard for what kind of product he wanted to offer our guests.
And what's the theme for that restaurant?
So it's a chef-driven menu. It's basically a tasting menu. The menu changes very, very often to whatever Jeremy wants to cook, basically.
Wow.
Whatever seasonal also. And he's just very, very he's really one of the best chefs that there is, in my opinion. And I've worked with a lot of chefs, a lot of very talented chefs, but he's at a different level.
How did you guys come up with the name Stubborn Seed? That's a pretty unique name.
I think our chief operating officer, Eddie, came up with it, and it had to do something with that Jeremy's very stubborn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he's stubborn for like, excellence, he's stubborn for all the right reasons. And so it kind of just,
that's funny.
Yeah. Came up for that. And then Red Rooster is a brand that's out of Harlem, so that's the one brand, that we don't own. That's owned by Chef Marcus Samuelson, who's one of the biggest chefs in the world. And what happened with that, that's a very interesting story. So he was really credited with Red Rooster in Harlem of really bringing Harlem back and really, once this restaurant opened there many, many years ago, Harlem started, flourishing. The Clintons moved their offices there. A lot of businesses started going up. And so what happens is that a lot of the inner cities, a lot of the cities in our country wanted Marcus to do the same thing for their inner cities and bring a rooster there that spoke to that demographic and to help those neighborhoods kind of. And so he ended up picking Miami for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of history with Overtown and Harlem.
Sure.
Overtown used to be called the Little Harlem of the South. And, it has a lot of, beautiful history that most people in Miami don't know, unfortunately. But so he didn't want to operate from New York here in Miami. So he just called us out of the blue. And we're like, okay.
Wow.
He just called the office and the receptionist is like, hey, you have a Marcus Samuelson on the phone. We're like, really? Okay. And he's like, hey, I have a project. Do you guys want to meet up? And we said, yes, the rest is history. So we got a Michelin bid for that one. So we're very, very, very pleased and very honored that we're only one of two Florida-based groups that has, multiple Michelins.
Wow.
So that's
fantastic.
So that's a badge of honor for sure.
Absolutely. Something to be proud of. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's next for you guys? And, where do you see yourselves in 5-10 years? Are you going to continue opening restaurants, in South Florida, expanding? What's the plan? We're
blessed right now that we don't need to expand just for the sake of expansion. So a lot of things have to line up for us to really do a project. So we just take them, one at a time, and if it makes sense, then we'll do it. I think at some point, since we're mostly, we're in Miami, I think at some point we'll develop a concept that maybe we can take abroad, do sort of like a big city rollout, like a New York or London or something like that. So it's something that I sort of want to do. That's still in my right. Wish list, I guess. But yeah, that's where we are.
So a question that I ask all my guests is, was there a game-changing moment or time or event that happened in your life where something really clicked? There just was a game changer for you in your life?
So we had hired a consultant, to help us put a lot together and all the documents and, how to roll it out, etc. And something he said stuck with me to this day. So it was a group in a conference room, maybe about, 6 of us. And he asked, what's the number one reason why people fail? And fail at business, fail in relationships, fail. And everybody's like, not enough experience, not enough education, like all these different things. And he said, self-awareness. And that really stuck with me. Like self-awareness, think about that. If you're self-aware of what your limitations are, and I know what mine are, I know what I don't know, which is a lot. But if you're aware of those things, and if you don't think you know everything, and if you don't think you do everything by yourself, then you're able to surround yourself with the right people, and you're able to know what you need and what you don't need. And if you take that just as a general concept, it can really apply to anything.
Absolutely.
So early on, having that mentality, it's like, okay, I know I'm good at this, but I really don't know how to do A, B, and C. Who can I hire to help me with these things?
Right.
Had I not gone with that mentality, who knows what would have happened, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Oh, fantastic, man. So Grove Bay Hospitality, where can they find out more info about you guys on your website or Instagram?
GroveBayGroup.com, yeah, that's our website, and Instagram as well. And in their, in our website, all of our, restaurants are there. And, yeah, pretty exciting stuff.
So make sure to go out there. Stubborn Seed, Red Rooster, Glass and Vine, and now the Bayshore Club. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you being here. Make sure to hit subscribe and give a like and share this with somebody who needs to hear it. You could be a game changer in their life. So make sure to catch up with us each and every week here on Game Changers. Thank you, everybody. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. you may end up being the game changer in their lives.